Welcome back. This is part 4 of designing your own methods. And in this video, I'm going to talk a couple setups. So we're going to get down to a few of them here. And what we're going to do is take the setups and put it in a particular zone in the swing. In previous videos, we talked about the process of a swing. Right? We layered the information all the way across. We talked about the process. We talked about the components, right? We're able to map and follow a market. And so in this one, we're going to get to the setup. Now, the setup is the least important thing of everything, right? What's most important, right? You can't do a setup in a vacuum anywhere. What's most important is your understanding of a market. And I spoke about that in the last video. How do you get an understanding? Well, you learn how to map a market and frame it. I don't care what you frame it with. You know, you can use fibs. I don't care. But you want to get an understanding of the push and pull of the buyers and sellers. You want to have some sort of framework that helps you understand that, oh yeah, they just tried to go down, but they turned back up and it's swinging, right? You want an understanding of your market, right? The type of flow. The market is different every single time. We can't just do some mechanical setup. We are discretionary traders. It's your understanding that makes the setup work. Setups can't happen in a vacuum. Number one, we need a good flow. Number two, we need a good understanding of a market. The setup is the least important. So remember that, because how we approach anything, including this teaching, will determine what you get out of it. And if you're just looking for some sort of instruction to blindly follow, or a statistic, you know, this is what you're going to get out of it, and it's not going to work out very well. All right, so let's get to the setup. We're going to show two here, a range type of trade and a wash and rinse. I'm mostly going to focus on the wash and rinse in these two zones. So we're going to take this wash and rinse, and there have been a few previous videos on this, and we're going to place it in one of the zones in a swing. So I've zoned out a swing, a new impulse leg. So again, first let's talk about the setup. The setup is going to require a solid impulse. I mean, I want the market to be in play. It's going to be like a relative gap, because it's going to be like a gap on the left. There's a blog on that. So I want a solid impulse, right? I want the market to be in play. I want to play when the market is ready to move. I don't want to just play because I have something that looks like a setup, but the market is kind of doing this and this. No, I want to boom, right? I want to play when the market's in play. So that's the first requirement. And then we're going to place it in, I'm going to focus on these two zones here. So let's just talk about a swing. And so this is more than just understanding instructions. I always want to try to impart and get across the understanding of what goes on here. So as price is coming down, there are sellers. Somebody sold it. We don't know who. They've sold it, and price is on its way down. Now we don't know it's going to turn up. But if it's going to turn up into a swing, you know, say this is a market that's in a, you know, uptrend, right? We're looking for it to turn up in a swing. These sellers are going to meet buyers. And it doesn't matter if it's a major swing or a minor swing, right? These sellers are going to meet buyers. And there's going to be this little bit of a transition area in here, which will often show up as some kind of contraction. So these sellers will meet buyers, and there'll be a wrestling match. This is often the hardest place to do trades, because you don't know if it's going to keep going down or not, right? It hasn't caught wind. It hasn't caught wind to turn up yet. Then at some point it catches wind, it swaps, right? You see it. Usually you see with a couple big bars like this, right? You'll see it start to swap. And this has a different dynamic. So each one of these zones has a different dynamic in how you're going to use the setup or how you're going to understand it. So as it goes up, I mean, you can just understand when you're looking at a market. By now, everybody kind of got that the market's going up. But there are still sellers along the way that have sold it. Right? So there's buyers pushing it, and there's these sellers pushing it down, right? They're meeting each other, and that often creates a pressure cooker zone, which you can look up in the blogs. This one doesn't do much, but it'll often stall and make another contraction underneath the high, like this one, right? Underneath, it'll stall because buyers and sellers are meeting. They're battling, and here you still don't know which way price is going to go. If it'll turn down, maybe it'll make a lower high. You don't know, right? There's a battle here. And this is where I like to do this setup here. And we'll look at several examples, right? Price will be going, it'll stall, scare everybody on the way down, and boom. Okay? And then here's the clean air zone, right? It's got a different dynamic. We're up here in momentum. We might keep carrying on, but right, we're in clean air. There's no resistance here. It has a different dynamic. Okay, so let's go over the setup now. The setup is a simple wash and rinse. You've heard me describe it as the pivot component often. And it's got steps that you can follow. It's got one, MPL, which is a multi-pivot line. It's just a place where a bunch of pivots are made, right? It's a clump of buyers stacked here. Right? It's a clump of buyers, right? That's a multi-pivot line. See, just this box alone gives you an understanding in real time, right? The buyers are holding it. Boom, 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 boom. For it to be a wash and rinse, you need a step 2. Zoom. And you can see what happens, right? People were trying to get on the swing. And then look at the pickup speed as they get stopped out. And then step 3, for it to be a wash and rinse, it comes back to retest. It might come straight through, but it has to retest. It doesn't have a choice. Like you see him struggling. Boom, 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 boom. Right? It retests. At this point, you don't know. It might keep going down. At this point, you don't know. It might keep going down. Step 4 finishes the pattern. You get a zoom, and you'll see it. It'll be, and you want to look for a zoom. You want this thing to zoom down, and you want this thing to zoom up. Go look at my previous videos on gap swaps. That's what that is. It's a gap swap. You don't want it to just drip. You want to zoom. You want to zoom. So I'm mentioning this because a lot of times we'll just take a good setup and make stuff up when it doesn't hit its requirements. So we want a good zoom, right? It shows us something about buyers and sellers. So that's what a wash and rinse is, and then we place it in one of these zones. And it's a beautiful thing, right? If you haven't been washed, if you don't understand the dynamics, right, go get yourself washed and rinsed. If you're a trader and you haven't gotten long and have banged out and turn up on you, then you need to practice more. You're not trading enough. This has happened to most everybody. So you can go make observations on a chart. It puts the market in play. Just make your own, pull up any chart and notice what happens before major moves. Don't believe me, go look. You can look at any chart. You can look anywhere and you'll see it over and over and over again, whether it's to the upside or the downside, right? You'll see it. Wash. Right? This is actually one of our setups for a short that I'm describing here. All right, so anyways, what it does is it takes people who were long stops them out. It also, there are people that have a short bias, and it triggers them to want to be shorts, their confirmation. And so it's kind of a double whammy that helps put the market in play. And that's what a good setup has. It has something that will put the market in play. You don't want to enter someplace where 10 hours later you still can get the same price. Right? You're just taking your chances then a lot of times. All right, so the other trade is basically a range trade. And we're going to look at these two zones is what we're going to focus on. So imagine price comes up, does like this. It doesn't bother to wash. Right? So you're just buying the bottom of the range here. And so what determines this? Well, it's a matter of how aggressive the flow is. I don't have a rule for it. Practice seeing 1,000 each of these, and you'll get a feel for that. First thing to do is learn to identify it. So a lot of times, once you get into this range, they'll drop them out before running it up. So on this chart, you can see this would be a clean air zone, since it's above the high, wash and rinse trade. Now look at the quality here of this new impulse. And remember in the previous lessons, right, it goes into a gap slide. This would be, you buy, once it sticks and holds, it's a multi-pivot line. This would be the push trade. Okay, this would be the push trade as you're watching this market. And then as it runs again, you can see it. This would be the wash trade on a minor level. So let's go look at a bunch of them now that we have got it somewhat. So we'll look at a bunch of them so you can learn to see it in different shapes, different instruments, and then you just go practice seeing them. So I'm just going to take some recent markets here. So as we were watching the euro, I want you to be able to identify these things. Okay, I want you to be able to identify these things, because they're not always just pretty picture perfect. We'll see some that look really nice, but an understanding of this market, you see it come out and just really, really running, right? And as it gets up here, just watch, right? It's running, it's pushing, it's running, it's pushing, and you can see it just make the shelf here. You see it, right? It's holding the shelf. It turns up, it's holding the shelf. And so what we're looking for is something to land down in here. And every case is different. In this case, it would be in the pressure cooker zone. Do you see the little, very small impulse, wash? So a lot of times, if a zone completes, it becomes someplace you can look at, even later on. So this is just trying to look and get a head start on it. But you'll see what happens is it comes down, turns up, multi-pivot line, zoom, retest, zoom. Now you just can't use it anywhere, right? This came with an understanding of this market is rocking and rolling. These people are pushing. So let's look at a few more. Let's look at, just see if you can identify it here, number one. So this is Alcoa. What you can do is first map your swings, see your zones, swap zone, pressure cooker zone, clean air zone. We can look at Friday. Here I did a trade in the YM. So we'll look to the downside. This is what I call a very nice impulse. And so what I'm waiting for, I mean, just to map this out simply, is for the thing to stall and then wash. So you'll see it. It will create a multi-pivot line. And what do you think is going to happen? You know, especially, a tick chart, 2-minute ES or YM Dow. This is a mini Dow. What do you think is going to happen when it busts? People are going to chase it. Boom. That's the setup. And if you look, that's the wash and rinse. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Now, I'm not going to go into details about the exact entries. Look at 1,000 of them, because there are several options. Let's see what else we have here. ABB, V. Just practice. So this is a stock. This is a drug company. Number one, see the zone, right? The swap zone, the pressure cooker zone. Now notice the pressure cooker zone here. This would have been buy the range trade if you wanted to make money. If you were waiting for it to fall into the gap on the left, you didn't. And that happens plenty, okay? I'm not telling you to do one or the other. I'm telling you to be able to distinguish on a chart. Now look at the wash and rinse in the clean air zone. You'll see it, right? Impulse. It's a beautiful, notice, beautiful impulse. Right? This is mapping to get an understanding. You get into the gap slide, push, 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 drop them, back through. Sloped pressure cooker zone. Right? So the contraction can be sloped or horizontal. We're not going to cover every little bitty piece in this video. But see if you can make observations on this chart and see where the pressure cooker zone is and see if it was a wash and rinse. One of the things that needs to draw your attention is the impulse. So you can see it's a swing. You can see all of this is, right, the swap zone area. Now look at that impulse. Boom. Now we're in the pressure cooker zone area. And we wash it. Look at that impulse. Okay? Look at that impulse. Now, whether you're trading the euro or the yen or the New Zealand, doesn't matter. So if I highlight this to you, okay, if I highlight this one, you should automatically see we're in clean air. We have this beautiful impulse. This was a push. Didn't really wash. It was a push. This was a range trade. You're basically saying, hey, I've got a range here. The way is down. I'm going to sell this back end of the range for a continuation. Now, this is an interesting case. Look here. So not only can this be used as a setup, right? It can be used to read a market. Right? You don't have to just, oh my God, where am I going to trade all the time? You can sit back and observe, because if you have a beautiful impulse, I'd love to be on this long, right? A beautiful wash, and you know what's expected of this, boom, you've just pulled the slingshot back, let's go. But if instead, what's it do? If instead it comes back below the wash and it fails on you, that's information, right? And look where price returns to. that same area. So this is a way it can be used in another manner, or it can be used just to read. So let's look at a few more. Let's look at, say, a daily yen impulse. This is all just gap slide. There's no real wash. Maybe there's sometimes you'll see this, right? And it's kind of a beautiful little 3 drives type of thing and engulfing. It's a little bit of a wash. It's a tiny wash. And then up here, how do I know this is the shelf? I have the impulse, and where the gap slide is, I'll start to project it. Then I'll look and where it hits and turns up. Okay, that proves the MPL level, and that is my shelf right in here, which pushes. It doesn't wash, although we might see it later on wash, so it's something to keep an eye on. Let's have a look at a few more, and then we'll wrap it up. We'll have a look at some things that are in play. It's not quite in play yet, but just for practice. Here's a gold weekly, which is getting everybody excited all of a sudden again. What zone, what part of a swing is this in, right? It's still working the swap zone. It hasn't left it yet. So you can follow this gold weekly in process. If it pops and runs with some sort of impulse, I'll be looking for something like this, and boom, okay, in the PC zone. So we can learn to watch some of these things live. So I got a few other live ones I'm paying attention to. Let's see. Now you'll notice a lot of these stocks I'm looking at happen to be energy or food related, a lot of inflationary stuff. The tech stuff, a lot of tech stuff like Roku and all, I'm shorting. It's the opposite way. But you'll notice I'm only getting nice impulses, right? I'm only getting nice impulses in a lot of energy stocks or a lot of food stocks. See, nice impulse. Or, mining stocks now are starting to. Some chemical stocks. So this is something that we'll be looking at live. And just for fun, let me show you one of my trades in SI, which some of you already know. It's it's a bank or finance thing highly related to Bitcoin. So let me show you one of the trades I did. See I'm pointing this out because I'm playing when there's a nice impulse. See the beautiful impulse back here? And then it builds the shelf where? In the pressure cooker zone. This is the swap. This is the pressure cooker. This is clean air. Okay? So here, I felt very aggressive on this, and I did the range trade with a small stop to push it. And so it's not like we always know. So I was aggressive at the wrong point. It literally gapped down and made my small stop a big stop. It was earnings. So it ended up being a wash trade, and I chose the wrong one, just so you see. All right, so I want you to see a lot of these things. So this is just, us doing a lot of practice seeing. This tobacco. This was obviously a push. Again, notice the impulse. Notice the impulse on some of these. All right, so that's it. We'll wrap it up there. And Best thing to do is go and practice. I'll put this slide back up. Looking at wash and rinse in the PC or Clean Air. Your job is to, number one, be able to identify it, and then go practice seeing it.